Hello, hello out there. Hello out there in no man's land. Where I'm at is safe because everything here is real and there's nothing to get hung about. In fact, I would say strawberry fields forever. So, where I'm at is February 16th, 2021. I'm in my home in Dallas, Texas, and it is 6 o'clock in the evening here in Dallas, Texas. Should you be listening to this and it comes to your attention that it is not 6 o'clock in Dallas, Texas, you may assume you are watching a recording. Hi, Rose and Lisa. Welcome. So, thank you, Radine. It's good to see you. So, listen to me. Raindrops on roses and no. These are a few of my favorite things. No. I wanted to start out with something more significant. I wanted to remind you all. Hey, Mark and Ann. I hope Ann's with you. Hi, Tammy and Debbie together, and Kathy. This is cool, man. Y'all here. It's nice to see you all. Sawadika. That means hello in Thai. Sabadimai. That's how are you in Thai. And my pet, no spice in my food. My pet. All right. So let's take a stroll down memory lane for a second. Brief one. Okay. I posted this link for your entertainment.
You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
Good. I'm glad Ann is there. I don't know why. Haven't seen Ann in 40 years, but still, I like to see her there. All right. So I just played a opening from the Twilight Zone. I think there were, I don't know how many there were. There weren't a lot. That was probably the most popular one, or the one that we all seem to know. And so, listen, we really are in a period of time which some people will summarize as Twilight Zone like. Lisa, earlier today, not that long ago, she was expressing some concern about how crazy it is out there. That these guys can be so crazy and suffer no consequences, so to speak. And I said, well, welcome to the time of law and disorder. That's how I tied it together with my perpetual radio podcast. Okay, law and disorder. But really, it is what's troubling everybody right now. So there's absolutely two camps, absolutely, and one is absolutely, completely chosen a path of asserting that nothing that happened on February 6th can be attributed to the president's activities or encouragement or incitement. And in fact, there is no corollary between anything that happened in assaulting the Capitol versus assaulting businesses during the George Floyd protests. And then there's people who absolutely see the connection between the activities, the speeches leading up to the attack on the Capitol. And so it's crazy town. It's crazy town. And the two can't even begin to reconcile how the other side might arrive at their conclusions. I, for one, despite being very good friends, or used to be very good friends with people who are Trump supporters, who are right wing, who are ultra conservative, I don't see how they, people whom I have respected, whom I believe uh, had placed value on integrity. Okay. So I'm just going to stick with integrity for this moment and say to you that to me, the lack of integrity by Trump and many of his cabinet and many of his administration, because there were the most indictments ever in the history of the United States, this is clear to me. The scheme, the conduct is unbecoming and obvious to me. Try as I might, I cannot fathom how you could look at all the rallies and actions and activities and things and tweets that were proffered by Trump for 4.5 years and not arrive at that conclusion. On the other hand, I step back and I say, well, let's say I hate liberals. Let's say I believe liberals are manipulating so many things, and Trump was somehow, through some quirk of fate, was some laudable character that was really going to save America. I still, being of that mindset, conservative mindset, law and order, not law and disorder, law and order, very conservative, very national security oriented. That's why I don't want so many foreigners around. It's why I want a tough president, not an Obama, to stand up to Iran and stand up to North Korea, whatever. So let's say that's something I aspire to. That ideologically, that warms my the cockles of my heart. Um, Still, how do I get around integrity? How do I get around the lack of integrity? How do I not see the absence of integrity and the absence of character? So that when I'm choosing my Messiah, how is it that I don't look at this Messiah and his flaws and go, God, you can do better than this? Okay. I mean, you really have to stretch. So here's what evangelicals have done in large measure. They've said that the behaviors of the president, albeit flawed, only show that God has chosen to use this flawed character because it demonstrates how such a flawed human can be used for such great purposes. This is God at his finest. That's kind of how this plays out, right? Because you can't defend his character. You can't pretend he didn't pay off Stormy Daniels, and I don't hear anybody anymore trying to pretend he didn't pay off Stormy Daniels. They're not saying that he wasn't divorced 3 times and that he openly was busted for cheating on all his wives and all the nefarious things he's done are not really in dispute. Now, the outcome of some of that, like his bankruptcies, a lot of people seem to find a way to believe the storyline that he's a successful businessman. Okay, so you believe that, and I'm not here to, uh, uh, you know, desecrate that part of his reputation, but I'm here to say that we all know that integrity was not an integral part of this man's character. No matter what side of the fence you're on, that much should have been driven home. So now what you have to do, or what you've been doing, is you've been forgiving the flaw of lacking integrity and substituting it with praise for an agenda. An agenda, not even ideology, simply an agenda. So you're no longer circling your wagons around an ideology, because that if that was a Republican ideology, maybe it would be a pro-life, or maybe it would be a free market economy, whatever. But no, you instead circled the wagons around an agenda which in large measure is based on white supremacy. And that's not an political ideology that was ever supposed to seep into American politics to the extent that representatives from various parts of the United States could come to the Capitol and openly exclaim an admiration for white supremacy, a disdain for people of color, a disdain for foreigners. This was not in any, because how do I know this? Well, I know this because we start with 1776, the revolution. The revolution actually preceded that. We know that we are nothing but a nation of immigrants, immigrants who have tremendous blood on their hands. We know that we're multicultural almost very early on, and that today, by any definition, we are the most multicultural country in the world. So, in order for you to circle the wagon around this agenda that has been proffered by Trump, you have to believe that you can undo the entire fabric of this society. You have to believe not only that you could turn the clock back Twilight Zone like and suddenly be a black and white half hour of a suburban town that where everybody seemingly is okay, but the liberals are really the puppet masters behind. I mean, you've got to want to go back. You've got to want to exclude in this black and white scenario blacks, gays, um, foreigners. Foreigners would only be allowed into this serial episode if they were perceived as a threat. So they could be in, but they would have a mustache, they would have thick eyebrows, and they would be one of the villains, right? Women would have no role in any of the episodes except as essentially a housewife or somebody who was scared who was being saved by a guy. That's the society that you are clamoring for, whether you openly proclaim it or not. I use the word progressive to define me, Ken Goldberg, because I have urged, I have advocated for, I have done what I can, been an activist for, moving the country in the direction I thought it was going. Multicultural, multisexual. I don't care if you're polyamorous. I don't care if you're gay. And when I say I don't care, I mean deep down inside, I don't care what you choose as your sexual preference. You can say, anybody here who calls me friend, you are welcome to say that you have a friend who declares openly that he doesn't care if you or anybody knows, not a relative of mine, not my dearest friend, I wouldn't care if they were. The only thing that I would be real judgy about would be pedophilia. I can't draw the line at pedophilia. I don't draw the line at you having pedophile thoughts because I think that there are people that have pedophile activity, right? But the reason I don't judge the thought is because if we were to lock people up for their thoughts rather than their actions, well, I probably would have been institutionalized many years ago. So I just don't care. I don't care if I'm working alongside a woman. I don't care if a woman is my boss. In fact, my boss has been a woman many times. Hyde Park Hospital, my boss was a woman. When I worked for the Brass Foundation, my boss was a woman. When I worked at Jane Addams Center of Hull House, my boss was a woman. When I worked at the YMCA, my supervisor was a woman, my boss was a guy, but my supervisor was a woman. I mean, you know, I don't know any reason you could never put down on paper reasons that I would pick up and read and go, now based on this, I would never want to have a woman be my boss or have a woman be president or vice president or secretary of state, whatever, right? So, so getting that, you know, I call myself a progressive because I think that, but when you identify as a progressive, all you're really asking for is that this culture, this society, this country keep moving in the direction that it was already being propelled in. We already have the immigrant population and more. And we need the immigrant population because, as I've said on these podcasts, we don't proliferate. We don't have birth rates high enough to sustain the United States workforce. You don't have to believe me. Google it. I swear to you, if you can find a contradictory study, I would like you to send it to me. I'm happy to read it, and then I'm happy to find rebuttal for it. All right. So, um, calling myself a progressive didn't seem like a very chancy thing or a very outrageous thing. But since the Obama administration began, a progressive has taken on a kind of a dark tint. You know, it seems like if you identify as being a progressive, you are somehow now being characterized, and I think this is relatively novel, that we are going to take apart, dismantle the suburban United States, even though so many of us may live in suburbia. And we are going to turn all the bathrooms that would normally be used by women into multi-gender so that not only could trans women use the bathroom, but eventually any man could just walk in and take advantage of any woman. Now, that doesn't make sense at any level. But if you never knew what a trans woman was or how they conduct themselves, if all you knew was something that Breitbart had told you online about trans women, then perhaps you would arrive at the conclusion that there was a threat when you heard that your school was establishing a unisex bathroom. Now, a unisex bathroom is usually just one stall, and you lock it. You lock the whole compartment when you go in, so there's, there's no chance of somebody of the opposite sex or even the same sex coming in on you because they've established a unisex bathroom. Kathy's best boss was a gay woman. Kathy worked, was that at the University of Chicago or was that at the hospital? Doesn't matter. I'm just curious. And Lisa says she's never understood why people care about who other people would have intercourse with. And yeah, well, it doesn't even matter to me whether you and I understand it. The fact of the matter is, what difference does it make, right? If two consenting adults decide to take themselves off the heterosexual marketplace and rely exclusively upon the homosexual marketplace for their romance or sex or whatever, what does that got to do with my participation in any of these marketplaces if I choose to be at the participate in the gay lifestyle or the heterosexual lifestyle or some combination of? I don't know why, how, where that affects anybody. I have two daughters and they have known about bisexuals. They had bisexual classmates, girls they told me about, in grade school. My daughters have no judgment about your sexual preference that I know of. They're 24 and 21. So they were raised with a progressive parent, perhaps two. I don't know what their mother thought, but they were raised with a progressive parent. They don't have any concern about your sexuality. They get that they get to choose who their partner will be romantically, sexually, and that ain't nobody's business but their own. And that at least they know that I have nothing to say about it except please hang out with people that are good for you. That's all I care about, right? So, um, so why am I this way? I don't know. Why is Lisa like me We didn't grow up together. We grew up in completely different environments. How did the two of us and many of you arrive at a place in our lives where we really just, when you examine our value system about things like homosexuality or immigration or any number, climate change, whatever it is, how is it that we have arrived generally um, at a place where we are considered progressives, we are considered liberals, and we are the bad guys? I mean, how does being open and open-minded translate into destructive? You you feel that way because once again, you want this. You want to go back to this time that you perceived, and I'm not accusing anybody here. It's a desire by a certain crowd to go back to a time where they thought the white man ruled and the white woman was his mate, and that black people knew their place. They had a separate fountain. They had separate toilets. They want to go back to where it was black and white on the television. They don't like multicolored, they think they like colored TV, but they don't really because they can see the Lionel Jeffersons of the world, right? They don't want, that's not where they want. They don't want to be there. They want to regress. But pretend for a moment that you had authority. Pretend you were Donald Trump for many years as president. Pretend there was no term limit and that this first 4 years was just the beginning. You couldn't, with the rest of his life available to him, convert this back to a homogenous society. This is heterogeneous. This is multicultural. This is multinational. That's just the way it is. Okay. So, and it's multigender. You're never getting gay people to go back in the closet. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know you could try. You can ban them from the military. You can pass laws to ban them in the workplace or prohibit them from getting certain medical care, never let them adopt a child. But you could do all of that stuff. There wouldn't be one less gay person 20 years from now than there are now. Gay people would continue to function as gay people. I suppose you could squeeze them back into a closet of sorts where they would hide their sexual identity because you would make it so onerous. But they're not going to convert to heterosexuality. There's not one study to support that conclusion. You're not going to get all the immigrant population to leave, and you wouldn't want them to leave. Pretend you could wave a magic wand and you could replace all these Asians and Latino and African immigrants here with just Nordic immigrants, just your Aryan white guy from Sweden, Finland, Norway, whatever. There ain't enough of them. You'd have to empty those countries out. You'd have to just shut them down and bring everybody over here and hope that there's enough talent and enough labor to continue to operate as the United States of America. So even if they get their way, even by that I mean getting their way, even if those who have circled the wagons around Trump and his agenda, even if they get their way, they don't get their way. Okay. Flip side, if this society continues to move forward and embraces its multiculturalism, embraces its sexism, I don't know what you call that, multiracial, multicultural society, puts its misogyny behind. If it moves forward in that fashion, there's every reason to believe two things. One, that the notion of a democratic republic, constitutional republic, would be sustained, number one. And number two, quality of life and contentment with life issues would increase significantly. one of the most significant factors right now in detracting from the quality of life, when they measure the happiness quotient of people throughout the world, we don't fare well, despite the fact that we proclaim we're the greatest nation on earth. We don't measure up. We don't measure up in the way we treat our workers, especially our blue collar workers, our industrial workers, manufacturing. We don't measure up in healthcare. We don't measure up in education. Okay. So we nobody else recognizes us as the greatest nation. We are or were frequently lauded for our advanced educational system, our university system. We were considered significant in promoting free speech and ideologies of democracy. But we've kind of put a stop to that for the while. Hi, Liza. So that's I don't get. I'm telling you that if you were a regressive, conservative, right wing individual right now, you're going to lose. Not because I stand in opposition to your agenda or what ideologies may be submerged underneath all that. You're going to lose because you can't run this country. You don't have the brain power unto yourselves. You don't have the manpower. You don't have the spiritual power to fuel this country forward. What you've got is a good set of brakes. That's what you got. You've been applying the brakes to the progress of this country, and your brakes are red hot. You've been slamming on them, and you've been throwing off that heat. And we have seen that heat manifested in violence towards our Congress, okay, both the Senate and the House and the building itself. We're seeing it manifested in threats against governors and secretary of states around the country. We're seeing it manifested in the number of persons who openly identify as a Proud Boy or a QAnon or a Nazi or a white nationalist or white supremacist. That's what we're seeing. And none of that, if you were to sit there and conduct a very thorough study of how productive are those persons that are identifying in those realms, if you look at what productivity they offer, you will see that they do not have significant numbers of well-educated people to undertake simply to run the digital element of the United States of America, much less this rotting infrastructure that we have, which needs lots of brain power to fix. You don't have the physical authority. You can't run our housing construction, our mines, our railroads, drive our trucks, drive our cabs, whatever it is. There are not enough of you to keep America mobile. So even if we just walked away and surrendered and said, you know what, you got it. It's your country. You lose. You lose. Ultimately, you lose. Maybe you don't lose right now, but you lose. So you say, well, I'll be dead by that time. That may be true. I often say to myself, thank goodness I'll be dead if you lose. But most of us have somebody we care about who's younger. Now, I don't know how you missed out on that little fact. So you're thinking you want to protect your little white grandchild. Maybe that's what fuels you, right? White America. You want white America because you do not want your daughter, your granddaughter, your great-granddaughter ravaged by one of those black animals or those Middle Eastern animals, Afghani animals. That's, so you're thinking you're going to preserve America. Well, we know this much. That could be possible if you can maintain homogeny exclusively around these people. So two things: you got to outlive them in order to do that. You've got to control them in order to do that. You have to keep them from ever being a part of the broader society. You would have to keep them out of institutions of higher learning where there are liberals, where there are people of color and immigrants teaching. You'd have to be careful about them going to a doctor's office because one of two things: either you would eradicate all of these immigrant doctors, in which case your particular part of the country won't have enough health care anyways, or uh, you'll just try to find you a white doctor or something. I mean, in other words, you would have to maintain a control that is not even possible. Uh, Much less is it ideal. Much less is it, even to stimulate your imagination. If you imagine your white world, I want you to know that if you introduce facts into your imagination, then the logical conclusion is no matter what QAnon has told you, or Trump has told you, or Stephen Miller has told you, or uh, Bolton, or Bannon, doesn't matter. I don't care what they've told you, how they told you, how weird or how sane it was, doesn't matter. The fact is, at a logistical, realistic level, you can't run this country without us. You see, ultimately, you need the educated class. I know you don't like them, but you need them. See, uh, you don't like China, and I don't blame you. China got a lot of issues when it comes to America, right? Except for one thing, they're training their people. So they'll always, if you begin to regress, as you're hoping to do, then China takes over the technological prowess of the globe, right? Now, I was with some people when I first got back from Thailand, friends, and I adore them. Don't get me wrong. But one of the issues when I told them about COVID over in Thailand and the measures that were being taken in Korea and Thailand on immigration when I arrived here, they were very disdainful of my concern about COVID. Here's what they were saying: that China's a backward country. They don't have the technology. We, the United States, is technologically superior, and we will stop this pandemic, this virus, in its tracks. Just wait and see. And I said, did you see the video of people in the streets of Wuhan, and they were spraying down the city with some sort of smoke, some disinfectant? And they said, don't worry about it. And that's China, man. Like they kind of described what they thought would be podunk America, but podunk China. And I looked and I said, you understand, Wuhan's like 11 million people. It's bigger than the biggest American city, and it doesn't even rank in China. It's not a Beijing, right? It's Wuhan. So we don't understand China. You people that don't understand international relations, international treaties. You don't understand how things move. You don't understand global transit or even national transit. Maybe you've got some engineering background. Maybe you know how to shoot a gun real good. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Um, you lose. That's all I'm saying. Jones says, well, immigrants, at least it says immigrants are the backbone of so many jobs that white folks don't want. Can't disagree with that. Jones says, we might have controlled the virus if we didn't have a backward president. I don't agree with that, Joan. I don't think we were controlling the virus, but you may not mean controlling in the sense that some people do. We were not going to control a pandemic. That's how it gets to be a pandemic. we might have minimized the number of people that would die. I've said on my podcast numerous times, I will give you that Trump doesn't, all 475,000 deaths are not at Trump's feet. We were going to lose hundreds of thousands of people under any scenario. It's a pandemic. Every country that's been visited by the virus has lost in the main, on the big thing, scheme of things. What we could have done if we didn't have a backward president is we would have minimized maybe by 100,000 or 200,000 the number of people that died. We might have seen far fewer people get sick, but we would have had, on best case scenario, even with a progressive president, we would have had hundreds of thousands of people infected and probably hundreds of thousands. We would have millions of people infected. We'd have had hundreds of thousands die. This is a reality of a pandemic. And this is why it's so important to understand that even if we don't know science, that we learn where to rely upon scientists, because this thing rolled over us like nobody's business. And while many of us were willing to concede control to a higher authority, the county, for us here in Texas, it's usually the county supervisor. Sometimes it's the governor, sometimes it's the mayor. Many of us were amenable to being controlled in terms of mandates of masks or mandates of social distancing or mandates to close certain businesses. Even had we done these things, there was still a price to pay, as Asia is proof of, as is Europe is proof of. The body count, we'd had to been so shrewd in the beginning, and there was, I don't think, I was there in Thailand when they shut Wuhan down. And if you didn't know this, there were direct flights from Wuhan to Chiang Mai, where I was living. So when they closed it down, you may recall, maybe you don't recall, about simultaneously, they announced that 5 million Chinese had already left Wuhan from the time they recognized that the virus was spreading to the time they actually shut down the city. Chiang Mai, Thailand, was keenly aware that not only did they have many tens of thousands of Chinese tourists in their country, but that a significant number of them had arrived from the city of Wuhan. So Thailand took action right away, right? Europe had this information. I mean, everybody had the information that Wuhan was being shut down. So the only two countries that seem to have truly been able to control it are islands, New Zealand, Australia. I'm not aware of other countries that have been infected that have been able to control the virus. So, but Donald Trump is backward. You're right. He was a backward president. He was regressive. He's exactly what I'm talking about. That's why they circled the wagons around him, and why they're still circling the wagons around him, and why I wish to God my liberal fucking friends around the country would stop being amazed at what the fucking Republicans are doing or what the conservatives are doing, and how in the face of all the evidence, you're thinking, oh, how is that possible? It's fucking been possible from day one. It's always been here. The question is, who has the advantage of controlling law enforcement? Who has the ability to pour the gasoline all over? Trump did, okay? He ignited the tinder. The tinder was there, like he said, should have been raking the forest all this time. In our case, in our society, we should have been kind of raking our society. We should have been addressing white supremacy at a very real and very concentrated level, so that the white supremacists would either been more marginalized and unable to creep into our Congress and to our electoral positions, or we should have been able to modify their intentions so that they didn't perceive overthrowing the government and us as the pathway to liberation from the constraints of prohibition of their firearms, their liquor, whatever the fuck it is, right? The agenda is very freaking clear. And if you continue to marvel at the agenda, if you continue to marvel at the distorted ideologies that you're seeing, I feel bad because I feel like you're part of the problem too, you know, because if you don't recognize how severe this is, it's like COVID-19. If you didn't recognize the nature of the pandemic, you didn't do anything about it. You didn't mask up. You didn't keep social distance. So let me tell you, I'm thinking I went to, a lot of us haven't had power. I've had power. A lot of us haven't. When I say us, people in Dallas, people in Texas, we are so screwed. Our power grid is completely screwed. But here's the thing. So AJ, my former host on Law and Disorder, she wrote that she went to Kroger and she spent an hour in line trying to check out. And she hasn't had electricity. She may have it now. I haven't gotten a response from her. She hadn't had electricity for 2 days in this brutal cold. So I went today. I wanted to get out just to get my blood moving, and then I went to Sam's Club. That was fine. Then I went to Tom Thumb. That wasn't bad. Then I went to Kroger. Oh my God. Oh my God. There was, even though there were cashiers there, the self checkout easily had 20 something people lined up. I got in a line where maybe there were only 10 people and a cashier, and there were no carts. Hasn't been a cart once in the last 4 days. When I've gone over to a Kroger, there's never a cart, none, zero, not even a basket, right? So I'm standing there. I got what I needed. I'm standing in line like this, frozen foods, and anyways, how challenging. You know, I had 6 items. Six items, and Kroger was nuts. I don't know what the problem. I don't know how you don't have carts. But frankly, when I drove away, I looked in the place where you put the carts, and there were barely any in there. So I don't know if people just stole the carts or what. I don't know what's going on, man. You know. And I don't know why Tom Thumb seems to be managing better. I don't know if it means they've got fewer customers, and that's why it didn't look overwhelmed. But in given what AJ experienced at Kroger yesterday and what I experienced today, I'm here to tell you, I wouldn't be rushing to Kroger, ladies and gentlemen. So I watched the Governor Abbott of Texas. He was just on a brief interview on NBC here, local NBC, and they asked him, what's going on with the power? And he, the mealy mouth guy that he is, and you're like, what? What are you saying, man? And he said nothing. So the interviewer, the newscaster said, yeah, but what are they telling you? You know, and what are you doing with what they're telling you? And he says, well, they're not telling me. That's the problem. They're not telling me. Well, if that's true, that just says that you need to get the fuck up out your wheelchair and move around a little bit, because you ain't getting shit done. Because when half your state or more is facing blackouts, uncontrolled blackouts, not even the rolling blackouts they promise, uncontrolled blackouts, and that the news has been able to identify that this was a logical probability because we didn't have an upgraded grid and we don't have a national grid. We're not tied in a national grid, which apparently is a problem. All the problems, you, the governor, that's what being the executive of a state means. You know why there's no power. You not only know why, you also know why not, you know why, and you know how to fix it. Or in the alternative, if you find out you don't know how to fix it, then you find the people that do know how to fix it and you harness them to get it done. Nothing like, he's not even talking like that. He's still running his mouth at like, I'm going to try to get to the bottom of this. You're going to try to get to the bottom of this. This is like, well, you can't be serious. There's people been without power for 3 days. It's just amazing what people, how do they prioritize, you know, you know, you're Abbott. You were elected. And here's what he said. He said to the newscaster, well, your listening audience, I'm concerned that your listening audience is suffering from this. No, dude, clean that up. It's not his listening audience. It's not the broadcasters listening. It's your constituents. What the fuck is so hard to understand that if we live in Texas, we're your constituents, even if we don't vote, and especially even if we don't vote for you, right? You're supposed to be doing, oh my God. Lisa says, Greg Abbott is the very worst. People are in life-threatening situations here. It's terrible and heartbreaking. Yes, they are. And I want you to know and understand fully and completely that Greg Abbott, Governor Greg Abbott, is really doing next to nothing. Now in Chicago, those of you from Chicago know that back in, I don't know, the 80s or 70s, late 70s, was it? Michael Blandick inherited the mayorship because Harold Washington died on his watch. So Michael Blandick was the mayor pro tem. So he got to be mayor, and he could have stayed mayor. He was part of the daily machine. He botched cleaning the streets after a big snowfall. He botched it for days. And so he was whooshed out of office, and Jane Byrne became the mayor. And when it snowed, you bet she made sure she wasn't going to lose on that basis. So I digress. Run Texas like an executive in charge, Mr. Abbott. Do something. Like I said, get up, get your lazy ass up out that wheelchair. I don't know what you're doing in a wheelchair. I don't care why you're in a wheelchair. You're a genuine paraplegic. You're a fake motherfucker because that's how you get elected. I don't know. I don't care. You know, you get no respect until you begin to address the problems. You've chosen openly to ignore problems of Texas. You conspired with Paxton to sue Wisconsin to try and salvage the United States for Trump. You're a Trumper. That's fine. Run freaking Texas. You freak of nature. All right. So got that off my chest. Oh my God, it's 6:48. The show ended 3 minutes ago. I apologize. I don't know where I went. My bad. So it's too late to do a full meta. So let's just do like a blessing. Let's do the usual blessing that I so enjoy. And I do it whenever I get a chance to because it's the way I am. Okay? So what I'm asking you to do is forgive me for not doing the full meta, and let us do this other form of reflecting on goodwill. So you bring your hands before your heart, close your eyes, bow your heads, take a deep breath, and just listen to the sound of my voice. You won't know what I'm saying, but I'll tell you. I've done it before. It won't hurt you. Yatta wahari hawa pura puri purenti sakarang. Ewa mewa ito tinang petanam ukapati. Ititam patitang tamhang. Kipa mewa samijatu sape parentu sankapa. Chando pana raso yata manito tira soyata. Sapitiyo wiwa jantu. Saparoko wina satu. Mate pawa wa tantara yo sukitika yuko. Pawa apiwa tana silisa. Nicha muta pachaino. Tataro tama watanti ayu wano. Sukhan patlang. Just as the rivers full of water fill up the ocean, even so does that here give benefit the deceased. Whatever you wished or wanted, may it quickly be. May all your wishes be fulfilled as the moon on the 15th day, or as a wish fulfilling gem. May all distress be dispelled and all diseases be destroyed. May no dangers be for you. May you be happy, living long. And he of respectful nature, whomever the elders honor, 4 qualities for you will increase: long life, beauty, happiness, and strength. Satu, satu, satu. Thanks, Mark. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Kathy and Ray Dean and Chris and Becky and uh, Joan and Tammy and Debbie and Kathy and Liza and Ginny and anybody else that showed up, Rachel and Rose. And, you know, I'm going to go relax. I told you yesterday, I meant it. When I'm done with the show, I'm pretty done, man. I'm toast. I'm running stream of conscious 45 minutes, man. I'm running on empty when it's over. Namaste. The perfection in me recognizes the perfection in you. Good night.